Hey everybody, Dr. Ben here at the Functional Medicine Centers, and I'm so excited to go over today what so many people are experiencing, and that is digestive issues. Last week I had two 26-year-olds in the same day, extreme digestive issues. I see it in teenagers, 20-something-year-olds, vomiting, diarrhea, constipation. I see it in 50, 60, 70-year-olds. Everybody in between, digestive issues are rampant, and I want to go over 5 reasons that we see, and these are some of the most missed reasons why we see digestive issues in people. So go ahead, if you haven't already, like or share or follow our page, and we'd love to get information out there. We at least once every couple days we're getting live videos, lots of research, as much information as we possibly can, and then also I love to see where everybody's calling in from or watching from, so go ahead and put that down below, and we'll make sure we put a shout out to you as well. So all right, here we go. Top 5 most common reasons why we have digestive issues, and these are missed reasons. A lot of people do not follow these, do not know what's going on in these systems, and so we've got to dig deep and we've got to figure out where those imbalances are coming from, and that's the true functional medicine approach, is to look at the body as a whole and figure out those underlying imbalances. All right, here we go. Number 1, leaky gut. So a lot of you may have heard of this term, but not quite sure what it truly means. Leaky gut is in this small intestine. So we go mouth, esophagus, we go into the stomach, and then into the small intestine. The small intestine is the long, thin part of the digestive tract. Hey, Susan in Nebraska, how are you? So it's that long, thin part of the digestive tract, and it's where we absorb a lot of nutrients. And so this is the part where we have all these little finger-like projections, and we're getting the food and the nutrients into the digestive tract, and then from there into the bloodstream. And so then we're able to take it different places, go through the liver, go through and take the glucose to different places in the body, all these different things. So that small intestine lining is really, really important, but it's also a barrier system, meaning that the barrier, just like our skin, this is the outside of the body. Inside of the digestive tract is still the outside of the body. And so it's this tube all the way through our digestive tract, and it's going to be a barrier and keeping things out from getting into the bloodstream. And so, hey Teresa, how you doing? Hey Megan. So that barrier system goes through, and if I remember those little balloons that we had when you were a kid, they were filled with water, and you go bloop, bloop, and squeeze them, and they'd keep going like this, and the inside would turn to the outside. That's what our bodies would be. If I squeezed you enough and your insides went to the outsides, it would still be part of that barrier system. So the inside and that gut lining is that barrier system. So what we do is we need to make sure that the body is able to keep is able to keep things out and also absorb it at the right time. So what does that mean? Well, leaky gut is when there is damage to that intestinal lining, meaning those finger-like projections are not absorbing as well as they should. There's gaps in that small intestine lining. Almost every person that has autoimmune disease has some type of leaky gut going on. They're just not able to absorb and bring in like they're supposed to. So leaky gut, one of the biggest things that we see with people causing digestive disturbances, but then overall throughout the entire body, causing this inflammatory cascade, causing the autoimmune, all these different conditions that are going on. Number 2, so number 1 was leaky gut. Number 2, we're looking at infections. Infections are rampant in the digestive tract, and one of the biggest ones that we see is what's called H. pylori. H. pylori for years has been known to cause ulcers in the stomach, but think about this, 80% of H. pylori is actually in the small intestine. And so in the stomach, you have nerve sensors that are going to tell you, oh, it's burning, I've got digestion issues, it hurts, things like that. But in the small intestine, we don't have those receptors, those pain receptors, so we don't know that that's happening in there. But 80% of H. pylori takes place in the small intestine. This is going to contribute to the leaky gut. It's going to damage that gut lining, and we're going to have more problems down the road with the inflammatory processes, all these different things. So infections, especially H. pylori, bacterial infection is a big one that we look for in the blood work. And So let me jump back here. I'll answer a couple questions as we go through this. Is it the same GERD, acid reflux? Yes, GERD is the same as acid reflux, and we'll get into that as well. Joyce, yes, so you're not getting that digestive tract isn't moving as well as it should. We'll talk about that in a second. Danielle, can leaky gut be completely healed? So there's different theories on can leaky gut be completely healed. Some people, they say that once it's been damaged to that extent, it's never 100%, and you always need to keep going back a little bit support over and over. Other people find that if you truly do it and don't ever cause any damage again, it can be healed. But for the vast majority of people we work with, that leaky gut can have phenomenal changes and really not have problems ever again if they do what they need to do. So leaky gut infections. Number 3, Joyce, this is what we're talking about with the gastroparesis, the vagus nerve dysfunction as well. And this is something we see in people all the time. The vagus nerve comes off the brainstem. It stimulates the gag reflex. It stimulates heart, lungs, a bunch of different things, but it goes all the way down into that digestive tract. The sphincter in between the esophagus and stomach, so the tube and then the stomach come together, and there's a little valve there that opens and closes, and that valve is going to be stimulated by the vagus nerve, and the vagus nerve is not stimulating like it needs to. We're going to allow food to push up on that valve, and then it's going to get back up into the throat, and that's where the GERD, that's where the reflux comes into play. So we've got to make sure that vagus nerve is working like it should. In our exam, we actually do a gag reflex test and to see if people actually still have their gag reflex. Another thing that the vagus nerve does is it stimulates what's called peristalsis, or the gut motility. So it's moving things through. So you've seen the snake that swallows the mouse and it squeeze. Well, same thing here. We squeeze things all the way through that digestive tract, but if it's not working, people get constipation. Maybe they get constipation diarrhea because the body's just trying to flush it through. So we've got to be able to push everything through as much as we can. And then one last thing for that vagus nerve, another valve in between the small and large intestine. And this is if you've ever heard of SIBO, small intestine bacterial overgrowth. That valve keeps bad stuff from the large intestine from getting into the small intestine. And so if that valve is not working like it's supposed to, it's not going to hold it, and it's going to be able to push and get back into the small intestine, and then we get a lot of issues coming through there. So leaky gut, infections, vagal nerve tone, and then we have the microbiome imbalance. The microbiome is this good bacteria, bad bacteria, yeast, virus, parasites, all these different things are a microbiome. We actually have microbiome on our arm, up in our nasal passages, in our mouth, all over our body, even in our soil, in our gardens. We have microbiome everywhere, but the microbiome in our gut is very, very important. It's going to play a huge role in our immune system. All types of different imbalances are going to come from our microbiome being off. If you take one round of antibiotics in your life, your microbiome will never be the same. That doesn't mean you can't help it and take probiotics and kill stuff off and do all these things, but it will never be the same. So we've got to protect our microbiome with everything we've got. Going on antibiotics has to be a last resort. Otherwise, it will definitely compromise a lot of our microbiome. So that microbiome, it's not just as easy as taking some probiotics, taking some yogurt, some kefir, some of these different fermented foods. We have to actually kill off the bad stuff first, build up the good stuff, kill it off, build it up, and do that a few times. We see it all the time in patients where just taking some good stuff isn't enough. We have to actually change that microbiome. But think about this. A lot of people, they look at a stool test and say, oh, that's going to tell me what my microbiome is doing. But guess what? There was a research study done last year where they did upper and lower GI and took samples of that microbiome all the way throughout, and they compared it to the stool test. Every single spot that they tested throughout that digestive tract was totally different than the stool test, than the fecal matter that the person sent into the lab. And what they found was that it was actually every single place throughout that digestive tract had its own microbiome, had its own diverse ability to be able to have different pros and cons and all these different things. So we can't just go off of a stool test. We've got to work through that whole digestive tract. Hey Tish, how you doing? Good to see you, Carol. All right, so leaky gut, infections, vagus nerve, microbiome, and then number 5, this is probably one that you guys have not thought about. These other 4 you may have heard about here or there, but number 5 is a huge one. This is called sympathetic dominance. So we've got 2 parts of our brain and autonomic nervous system. Autonomic meaning automatic, so breath, heart rate, all these things that we don't even think about. So what do we have? We've got sympathetic and parasympathetic. Sympathetic is going to be our fight or flight. Parasympathetic is resting and digesting. But guess what? You can't do both of them at the same time. You can't be in fight or flight and digesting at the same time. So what do we need to do? Well, we've got to get out of that sympathetic dominant, out of that fight or flight pattern, and we can get into the digestion pattern at that point. So this is why we do brain map on every new patient, why we do neurofeedback with a lot of our patients, because we've got to get them out of that fight or flight pattern. Otherwise, you'll never digest like you need to. Just like on Black Friday, if you're running around the store trying to get that massive TV and you just ate your breakfast burrito, there's no way you're going to be able to break down and digest as well as you should. Hey Hilda, good to see you. So we've got to get out of that fight or flight pattern, and that's where deep breathing and prayer and meditation and relaxation and yoga and all these different things are going to be massive help for calming down that sympathetic dominance. That's why we do neurofeedback with patients, why we get them out of that sympathetic dominant, calm them down so that they can digest, because if you're in a chronic fight or flight, your body does not know if you're being attacked by a mountain lion or if you're just stressing about what's coming up tomorrow. So these top 5 things: leaky gut, infections, vagal nerve tone, microbiome imbalance, and sympathetic overload or sympathetic dominance are all things that you've got to look into when you're having digestive disturbance, and you've got to go through step by step, rule those out, and fix each and every one of them. And that's what we do in the functional medicine world. For those of you that would like more in-depth information, we've given more tips, more in-depth stuff on COVID, a bunch of different things that we can't talk about as much on the main Facebook page. Go to Health Solutions Now. It's our Facebook group, private Facebook group, where we get more in depth into all of this information. So, all right, guys, make it a great day, and keep up the good work. Keep that digestion as strong as you can, everybody.